What's good, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Land Grant Podcast Network's Power 2 Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jordan, and I'm here with my co-host, DJ.
Yes, I am here. I'm alive.
Alive and well.
Well, I'm alive.
All right, I understand. I do understand. This is our first official off-season podcast. You can't consider the last one off-season podcast. It was right after the championship, I think. I don't know when we record. It doesn't matter. This is, as we're claiming it, our first official off-season podcast. It is also the first podcast of Black History Month. So shout out to Black History Month. And there are things to talk about. We are going to try to keep this show entertaining in the off season, which means we will, of course, be talking about college football. And there's going to be a million things to talk about. There's always going to be something to talk about as rules change and all of these sort of things happen and everything like that. But at the same time, it will give us the space to step outside of college football. How do you have a sports podcast and not talk about March Madness? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, hello.
Super Bowl, some of those kind of things that'll come up. But speaking of not college football related, you can't have a sports podcast with a host who lives in Dallas and said Dallas host who also follows the Mavericks when said Dallas Mavericks at the stroke of midnight on the East Coast decided to lose their rabbit ass mind and trade
their franchise player
Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis and some crumbs. DJ.
Oh my God.
Resident Dallas Mavericks fan. Also, resident Dallas Cow. Dallas is just bad right now. Resident Dallas. How is Dallas? Please
let us. I don't know. I'm afraid to go outside. Actually, I really want to speak to Nico. I met him not too long ago, and I was just like, I feel like this man is a genius. He has a really, really great mind. He has a really good understanding of what it takes to build a basketball. So I have a lot of trust in him as a GM. I don't even know what to say about trading Luka, because it's just one of those things where it's like in sports, right? Like you get to a point where certain individuals on teams they're the figureheads, they're the franchise players, they're the face of the team. And you just don't see them being, I guess, tradable, but they are, realistically speaking, they are. I just feel like for AD is interesting because from what I gathered, the logic behind trading Luka was our concern about his conditioning and his ability to keep up. I mean, he is ineligible for awards this year because he hasn't played enough games, right? So and he's up for Supermax next year. So I get it. We saved millions of dollars in cap space by trading him. But AD is also injury prone. So I'm just kind of confused about what we think we're getting. But I also know that when it comes down to it, the Mavericks have some really, really strong guard play this now, we do. And really the need is for bigs more than it is for guards at this point. So that's the most realistic answer that I could give as to I'm fine. I understand how other people feel, but I do understand the lot. It's just crazy. To do it at midnight is nuts.
Yeah, no. So I understand the logic. I just think the logic is flawed. And I also think because they were desperate, they got a bad deal out of the trade. I get the logic of saying, the Mavs saying, we want to win now.
Yeah.
We also don't trust Luka for that 5-year, $345 million. I was talking to my friend and they were like, oh yeah, well, Jaylen Brown got that. And I was like, Jaylen Brown was only 300. And because he didn't get all NBA last year, it actually became 286. So that is actually a $60 million difference from Jaylen Brown's ended up being 286 to 345. And Luka was getting that whole 345. He was going to get the whole 345. You have the injury concerns. You have the concerns about his his being in shape and things like that. So in theory, I get it. I also in theory get, we want to win now, and we think
Yeah.
with Kyrie, with whoever your other guards are,
Yeah.
if you still have that young center who is catching all the lobs,
Derek Jared
adding
Lively. Yeah.
adding AD, who is currently still playing as a top 10 player, and saying for the rest of this year, the next 2 to 3 years, when Kyrie can still play, when AD can still hoop, and we have this young core, this is what's going to get us a ring most.
Most
Yeah.
likely. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also I get that logic. I get the Lakers' logic of saying, I don't think we can build around AD because he's already 31 and
Yeah.
he's injury prone. And we've seen, as much as like AD has been an engine for the Lakers, we've seen AD when LeBron's not on the court, and they really just don't win that much. And obviously, you can't build around 40-year-old LeBron. So I
Yeah. You
get
need a young
wanting
star. Yeah.
that young player. And every franchise thinks like, yeah, we can get that motivation out of him. We're the Lakers. We can whatever. And of course, the Lakers, as they do, they always try to get one superstar because then they think, oh, stars will flock
That's the whole
to
team. Yeah.
LA because
Yeah.
one, the Lakers, two, to play with Lucas. So I get all of that.
Yeah.
My only thing with it is I just think it's a bad trade for both because the Lakers, also, hold on. The Lakers ruined this season. They're not winning anything this season.
Yeah.
Like this season's done, and they effectively said goodbye to LeBron. And you still have to hope because the Lakers, I don't believe that the Lakers can build a team around Luka because they couldn't build a team around LeBron, and they like the little pieces and all that sort of stuff, and the money's only going to go up. So I don't believe they're going to build a good team. You also do have to deal with Luka being injured and
all the time,
all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then on the Mavs side, you just didn't get anything for him. You lost
got
a player.
picks and
You got
AD.
a pick. You got one pick. You got one first round pick in like 2029. And AD, who is 6 years his senior and also has injury issues. If you win a ring, fine. Nobody's going to care. But if you don't,
this is going to be one of the worst trades in NBA history. Like, if it does not turn out exactly the way that we are both sitting here discussing how it could turn out, it will easily be one of the worst trades in NBA in NBA history.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Lakers won the trade easily because
they won.
Luka is currently a top 3, 4, 5 player in the league.
He's an MVP level player. If he played enough games,
he's an MVP. He's an MVP level player even when he's chunky and out of shape. So either he stays chunky and out of shape and you still get that level, or maybe he locks in and you get an even better player. But you're betting. I don't think Luka's going to play for another 10 years. I don't think any of the European players are going to play that long, to be honest. They all seem to sort of hate basketball. And Luka's
they also have been playing for a really, really long time. Like, we've only known them for a couple years, but he's been a pro since he was 13 years old. This is technically his 15th year or something crazy.
Yeah.
But
you're betting for the next 7 years, 8 years, whatever it is with Luka. That's in my opinion, that's a much better bet. So I think the Lakers sort of won easily. I saw like a trade grade that had the Lakers at like an A and had the Mavs at like a C plus or something like that. And it's just like the thing is like I understand the logic, but the logic is flawed in both directions. But most importantly for me, it's just like you bet on your ability to keep Kyrie happy, to keep AD happy and healthy, and to keep your young stars because you didn't save that much money currently. Of course, you saved the 345, but you didn't save that much money, and you didn't get any picks or anything to be able to build around the team. So your belief is that switching AD for Luka is what's going to win you a ring. That's it. That's what you saw. You said if we get AD, we're going to win a ring. That was the math in their head.
Yeah, I will say, I can't believe that like this was kept such a great like secret, like because I don't know how long these conversations have been going on. I don't know if this was like they just decided it and broke the news that night or whatever the case. But the fact that none of us saw this coming, like people were having like real-time reactions like during games, like players were having reactions during games, like it was the trade heard around the world. Like everybody was like, what just happened? Like And mind you, of course, it is because it's 1 a.m. or 12 a.m. or whatever. But like, that is just for there to not even be like a leak or like oh, this might happen. Like,
It was after, yeah, it was after it was agreed to.
this
Like,
is crazy. This is crazy. So the trade, it just in case you guys are not fully aware, the trade is Dallas Mavericks. We sent Luka Doncic, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Lakers for Anthony Davis, and Max
Christie.
Christie, and a 2029 first round pick. The Jazz was also involved with this trade, which a lot of people are not aware of. So the Jazz will receive Jalen Hood-Schifino, a
Involved.
2020 involved, a 2025 second round pick via the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Mavs 2025 second round pick is part of it. And of course, it is one of the most surprising and substantial trades in NBA history. So we're just gonna have to see about that. But Nico Harrison said, we really feel like we got to get ahead of what's going to be a tumultuous summer. Him being eligible for the Supermax and also a year away from him being able to opt out of any contract. And so we really felt like we got to get out in front of that. We know teams, they've had it all out there. Teams have been loading up, trying to sign him once he becomes available. So basically, they didn't want to get in a bidding war over him. They want to let the Lakers handle that. And honestly, I'm not mad at that. I don't want to get in a bidding war over Luka Doncic either, because we would be coming out of a lot of money if we did. So
I didn't even think about that. The one thing that I was going to say is the Mavs, they low-key grimy because now Luka isn't eligible for the Supermax. Because you can only get the Supermax from the team
that he was on.
You have to be on that team for like X number of years. So he's eligible for like a max, which is still going to be a lot, but he's not eligible for the Supermax. So like whoever's going to sign him, whether that be free agency, because and for those of you who don't know this, the creation of the Supermax was because the NBA was trying to curb free agency. They were trying to help small market teams to be able to keep players.
Because stars,
when the money was equal, right? If the Lakers are offering you 5-year $200 and the Mavericks offer you 5-year $200, you're going to go to the Lakers. But with the Supermax, if that's been your team, that's the team that drafted you. I don't know if you have to be drafted or you just have to be there for a certain number of years.
I think it's a certain amount of time, but I'll look it up while you talk.
Yeah, so like if you've been on that team for 3, 4, whatever the number of years are, as well as you've hit certain thresholds, all NBA, MVP, defensive player of the year, that sort of stuff, the team that you're on, that you've been on for X number of years, they're allowed to give you extra money. They're allowed to give you the Supermax versus the max, and then a lot of people stay because that is significantly more money.
It has to be still with the franchise that drafted them or traded for them before their 5th year. So they have to be playing up to at least 8 or 9 years, and then they have to be on a team for a certain amount of years before they're eligible.
Yep. And so it's like that benefit to help those kind of smaller market teams, because like if you're in like say Detroit or whatever, and Detroit can offer you 5 years $340 and the other team can only offer you 4 years $300 or whatever, maybe you leave for that, but that extra year, extra $40 million keeps a lot of players at home. But now, because he's being traded to Lakers, he's not eligible for the Supermax, which also also kind of hurts the Lakers in this thought, because like in my head, I'm just like, you get Luka, you're gonna sign him, but what if he doesn't want to play in LA?
But what if he's not about it? Yeah,
and the Lakers don't really have that advantage. I think that there's some minor advantage because they'll technically have him for 2 years, but it won't be the Supermax. So like there's no guarantee he signs a contract extension.
Not at all.
The Lakers may have really ruined their window. So I just think I get the logic on both sides, but I also think it's a bad trade on both sides. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if either team regrets it. If like both teams regret it.
I feel like both teams are going to regret it, because I just don't see where we're getting a championship from without Luka. Like, frankly, like I just don't see where we're getting a championship from. I see us going pretty far, like in the postseason. Like, I'm not saying we're a bunch of scrubs. I will say with the injuries, we've been able to really see how much depth the Mavericks actually has. And we have quite a bit of it there. Like, we've got some pretty solid guards that like most of us would not have seen otherwise. So like, I'm here for it. But to me, like LeBron and Luka sounds terrifying. Like them together, that sounds absolutely terrifying. And I know like the Lakers season is kind of like, but I'm just also like,
man, if they could
LeBron
get like,
and Luka are scary as hell. And you're telling me they're gonna play together?
Yeah, if they could get one more year, because I think this year's it's capped because like they don't have no trades, they can't really get a center. Like I think they're done for. But if they can get a little chemistry this year, and they can get one more year from LeBron, and they can get a center and some more like shooting, that 2-man game, the pick and roll, like Luka picking for Braun and popping out,
Yeah. Yeah.
Braun setting a
Or
pick
him
for
just throwing
Luka
it in
and
the air
rolling.
and Bron
Literally, well, no, that's like yeah, and like Braun picking for Luka and rolling. Both of them are going to be good in that. Shoot, what do they call it? In the short roll,
Oh,
when
yeah.
you don't go all the way to the basket, and then LeBron going to the. I mean, like that. No, you're not gonna be able to stop that.
That's
Look at
literally
LeBron
terrifying.
2-man game. You're not gonna be able to stop it. They just need some spacing and they need a big man. But they're not gonna get that this year. I think. But and Luka's injured this year. I think this was a bet of like maybe we get a good Luka and LeBron year next year, and then the next if we can re-sign them the next 5-10 years. But
We're just gonna have to see. But Luka
basketball.
basically, in essence, lost about $116 million just
Oh
in
my
that trade
god.
because now the most that the biggest extension that LA would be able to give him would be 5 years, 229 mil. If he was still on the Mavericks, he would get 5 years, 345. So just in getting traded, they have made him eligible for less money. It would have been, had he stayed on the Mavericks, the biggest contract in NBA history, surpassing Jason Tatum's 315 mil.
Yeah. And
So
so now
Nico was
Jason
like, "We're
Tatum,
not paying that."
yeah, now Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, all those players are supposed to be making
Yeah.
significantly
To be
more money than Luka.
fair, it's a ruthless move
Yeah.
on Nico's part. It's ruthless.
You just cost that man 120 M's.
Like that is but I also like I get it. Especially cuz the Mavericks is still under like new ownership. There's already talks about like if they're either going to stay in American Airlines and what that looks like, and if they do, what kind of upgrades are they going to put on the building? All this other kind of stuff that's going on, just business wise with the Mavericks. So I think they're just trying to save money where they can. And honestly, I don't want to pay somebody $345 million who can't even play enough games to be eligible for awards, let alone what they need like to actually just be available for their team. Like that's something that like I would be tired of dealing with after a certain amount of years. Just like with Zion, like can you play one full year of basketball, please?
Hold on. He played one.
Okay, so moving on
No,
to
no,
the
yes,
next.
please, because y'all have not listened. Y'all were not listening to our old podcast. We
Oh,
can talk about Zion for 6 years. We have both been anti-Zion. I'm also anti. Never mind.
and so who?
Nothing. We have both been
Wait,
anti. No, we've both been anti-Zion, and we
very
have been
much.
talking about this for a very long time. So we're gonna move on. But
Yes.
I was gonna like telepathy. I was thinking about Zion. Like, yeah, he about to get up out the league too.
They're
So
about to
we're
kick
gonna,
him out. But the
yeah.
problem with Zion is
Nope. There's
when
no
he comes
problem.
back, nope, I'm gonna
Nope.
tell you this one thing.
Oh
When he
God.
comes back, he plays well. So then you're like,
But he don't ever
damn
play.
it. But he only plays one game out of every 12. So you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, like he's playing well, but he only played 12 games this year. 12. There's been 50. Okay, so moving on to the next piece of news. So Justin Fry is going to the Cardinals. Let us know about that because I don't care
Yeah,
nothing about the
Justin.
Cardinals.
Yeah, Justin Fry is Ohio State's offensive line coach. He's going to the Arizona Cardinals. I
Gotcha.
I think this is a win-win because one of the things that I was afraid of is like, so first of all, give him his props, right? He did an amazing job developing this line. He did an
Yeah.
amazing job handling the injuries, like rotating, playing with really young players who even at fall camp didn't look ready to play and then became starters. And like now you feel really good about Ohio State's line. That's one thing that I'm going to talk about in offseason, because I think people are overrating certain teams and underrating Ohio State based on who they're returning. And it's like Ohio State's returning like most of that's a later conversation. But I think it's a win-win because he did enough to keep his job. And props to him. But his biggest problem is he's an awful recruiter. And that wasn't going to change. And so you could say, yes, he develops, but I want a good developer developing 5 stars, top 100 players. I don't want a good developer developing 3 stars because that's the only people he had on his roster. And truthfully, He got lucky this year. Our line would have been absolute dog shit next year if nobody got injured. But because they got injured, he was able to spend all of this time with these young guys. They were able to get snaps. And then we went to the championship. They got 2 extra months of practice. If this season would have went the way that it went and nobody got injured and those young guys didn't play, we would have a bunch of medium recruits because he's not getting 5-star. He's not really getting top 100 recruits. And you have no idea what the line is doing. And he's also not great in the transfer portal. So I think this is a win-win because obviously he's a great developer. You can do that in the NFL. He's a horrible recruiter. You don't have to do that. He set Ohio State up in a place because of the injuries and because of his development where the line is, although everyone, except for one player who's going to be the left tackle who got in the portal, everyone coming back on Ohio State's line that has experience still has 2 or 3 years left to play. So essentially, Ohio State's going to have its starting line for the next 2 years, most likely. Like they may lose their center, but like 2 guards and a tackle, maybe even the center, they're going to have for like the next 2 years. So he left it in a position out of luck and his development, but out of luck with the injuries, that the next guy who hopefully can develop but also recruit has 2 years to fix his recruiting problems.
To get a life.
Because
Yeah,
he doesn't need to fix it this year or the next year because there's going to be depth. But after that, there's nothing. And so I think it's the best of both worlds. He gets to go to the NFL where he doesn't have to recruit. He can be a developer, make good money, and Ohio State can hopefully get someone that can recruit as well. Because Ohio State's philosophy, in my opinion, on the offensive line they should take 3 or 4 guys from Ohio every single year, and then they need to take 2 or 3 guys nationally. I think Ohio State should never bring in less than 6 offensive linemen, and that does not include the transfer portal. Right, because it's 5 positions. So like people are like, he only brought in 3 freshmen and then 2 in the transfer portal. It's like, oh yeah, but he brought in 5. But yeah, one of them has 1 year of eligibility. Either way, that's the news. Notre Dame hired Chris Ash to be their defensive coordinator. Chris Ash has been a defensive coordinator in 7 million places, including previously Ohio State, and he was most recently in the NFL for 3 or 4 years. I don't have any thoughts about it. I understand the logic of like he's an experienced DC and he has NFL ties, but he hasn't been a DC in so long that I don't remember what his defense looks like. He's most likely just going to run Marcus Freeman's defense, but
probably
it's definitely not a bad hire. And the last piece of news, which if you want more in depth on this, you can listen to your I-80 football show. Michigan is fighting.
No, listen to I-80.
Yeah, Michigan is fighting the NCAA's notice of allegations. The only thing I have to say about this, because I'm not sure if you saw it,
I have not.
Michigan essentially was like, okay. We cheated, but only a little bit. Un poquito. Just a little bit. And since you didn't prove it, you should just give us a slap on the wrist. Me personally, I feel like you should just give us a slap on the wrist. That's basically their whole thing. That basically the whole thing that they dropped, the whole article, all of these things is like, okay, fine, yes, we cheated a little bit, but like not that much. And like you didn't prove it, so like, can you really punish us? That's kind of the vibe of the whole thing. And it's hilarious because yes, the NCAA is going to punish them. And last thing, because you have something to say clearly, the NCAA is very much like if you negotiate with us, we'll take it easier on you. And Michigan is refusing to go into negotiations about a punishment. So that means the NCAA is going to punish them with whatever they want to. Michigan will try to fight it, but they won't be able to. So Michigan's fucked.
What? Like, yeah, we cheated, but like, how much did we cheat for real? You cheated.
Mm-hmm.
What do we just have to move on.
Perfect.
Like, you cheat. Like, what are we? Oh, but we could get a different punishment. Kiss my ass. Like, actually kiss my ass, because maybe don't cheat. Maybe win fairly. Like other schools. You're fucking Michigan. You can get NIL money out the wazoo if that's what the real issue is. Hello, we got other teams that got $20 million rosters. Y'all can do the same thing. Y'all have enough money. Like, you just don't have to cheat. Like, you just don't have. There is no circumstances where cheating makes sense. And now you're like, well, since you didn't prove it, okay, well, just because they can't prove the murder doesn't mean the person's not dead. Like, I don't. Okay.
We're going to go on break. We'll come back right after the ads to give our 10 lessons from 2024. We will be right back. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Land Grant Podcast Network's Power 2 Podcast. As always, this is the perfect time for you to go to YouTube and follow us at Get Defensive Sport Network, for you to go to Instagram and follow us at Get Defensive Sports Network.
Get Defensive.
And for you to go to TikTok and follow us at GD Sports Network, because TikTok has a length on names.
Period. TikTok.
Give us a like, give us a subscribe, all that sort of stuff. You know what it is. Even if you don't watch on YouTube, you have a YouTube. Your kids have a YouTube. Your wife, sister, brother, cousin, they all got a YouTube. Just
if you got a Gmail, you got a YouTube.
Just hit the subscribe button. That's it. We're not asking for too much. Let's run through our 2-minute drill. This is, of course, the longest 2 minutes in college football podcasting. There will be TV timeouts.
Oh my god!
There's a timeout after every first down.
After every first down is insane.
That's what happens in the 2 minutes in college football.
I know.
It's timeout after every first down, but we get through it. I don't actually want to talk about this because
neither do I.
I sort of hate the NFL right now. I don't know why. It's just like, meh. But Eagles Chiefs prediction. Do you have a prediction? And I know this is awful for you because you're a Cowboys fan, so you can't root for the Eagles, but you're also tired of Patrick Mahomes. This is definitely, but you got to give a lesser of two evils pick, or just pick out the feelings and just who you actually think is going to win.
Kendrick Lamar is going to win the Super Bowl, and because he's going to have the entire nation and in a stadium full of people saying "OV-ho," say "OV-ho," and saying A minor. So that is what I am looking forward to personally. I'm still trying to figure out if there's a way for both teams to lose. But if I had to watch either team hold up the Lombardi Trophy, it's just going to have to be the team with the actual black quarterback. I'm not saying their names, but y'all know what I mean by that. So.
Okay. Wonderful.
You made noise all through my speech.
Yeah.
What about you?
I understand how this game is played. Chiefs are gonna win.
Yes, which is why I'm just like,
they're gonna win.
Why are we even talking about this? Honestly,
they're gonna get the 3-peat. They're inevitable.
It is this whole season has been manufactured so that way it can happen.
Ooh, I'm not gonna go that far.
I am. It's being manufactured.
I have said multiple times that I do believe in sports conspiracies, but very specific cases. I don't think that this is one of them. But although I reserve the right to change my mind if two things happen.
Okay.
If Travis Kelce retires and proposes to Taylor Swift, this was ordained. If that happens, this was ordained. Like, if that's how he walks off, this then becomes the New Orleans Super Bowl after Hurricane Katrina. It then becomes Denver's Super Bowl and Peyton Manning's last year when he had a noodle for an arm. It then becomes the Ravens Super Bowl after right before I was going to say Ed Reed, Ray Lewis retired.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, yes. If not, it's just a regular year, and nobody's figured out how to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs.
I really
And part of the reason I say that is if the NFL really cared about like the three-peat and all that sort of stuff and whatever, it'd have been Brady. It'd have been Brady. They would like I don't think
I agree. It would have been manufactured for Brady, but I think also I'm not going to also act like I can't see that like they are also and they have been ever since the kid won the first Super Bowl, heavily been trying to make him the face of the NFL, the face. He's the one, he's the chosen one. He's got the biggest ever contract. Like they're already like doing other stuff to like make him seem like this unbeatable, untouchable, whatever. So I don't know.
He's been to 7 AFC championship games in 7 years. I don't think they're making anything.
No. I'm not
like
saying
somebody beat him,
his
please.
talent
like,
isn't there. Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not saying his talent isn't there. Like Josh Allen, please get it together. Like you've gotten 4 opportunities, but which is why it's going to be even more asinine when they do make him MVP. Like it's just going to be like, bro, you can't. This is the same issue. You have the same problem every single year, and we're going to reward you for. Okay. But anyways, what I was about to say was, I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes is not talented because people will willfully misunderstand me. I'm not saying he's not talented. I'm just saying that I also understand the sports business. And I also understand that he is selling a lot of jerseys and he's selling a lot of tickets and he's selling a lot of State Farm insurance. That's all I'm saying. So the 3-peat would just make his name worth so much more. Mind you, they got him in a 10-year contract, which means he's not even going to make as much money as he could possibly make off of himself. But they stand to make a lot of cash off of winning a 3rd Super Bowl in a row. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I think we always disagree on this point on various things, on how much the business of sports influences the on-field.
The actual, yeah.
I think that you are right. I just don't think that.
I'm not saying it's all. I'm saying they work. It's a feedback loop. I'm not saying like it's just this conspiracy that I'm saying. There's also obviously talent to be accounted for. Like I'm not saying that the team is trash and they're just dragging them to the Super Bowl. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there may be preparations. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So I don't think it's ordained, but Travis Kelce proposal with a retirement, I'll change my mind. All right, let's get into our 10 lessons for the 2024 season. We are getting.
You're not gonna do the other 2-minute drill.
Oh, I forgot that they were there. To be honest with you, I don't want to talk about this at all.
Then let's not, because I don't even know what it is.
I should have put this in the news segment, so it was quick. I will just say very briefly, I hope everyone at FS1 burns in hell. Specifically, I think his name is Charlie Dixon. Someone else came out with another lawsuit against him for sexual harassment. And as we said when the first one came out, this is not the first time it happened. This is just the first person that would speak.
That said something. Right.
Another person who was a actually like on-air talent who essentially had the trajectory of her career change because of this. She is now also suing FS1. And so I will just say, be on the lookout. There will be more. That's how this works. And they are not the only and or the first to have been preyed upon through that company.
What a mess.
WNBA madness. Take it away.
What a freaking time. Okay, so the WNBA free agency literally just started like, I don't know, like a week ago or something like that.
Nope. And yesterday. Like officially. Like they couldn't sign deals until yesterday.
That's just not true. Because they've been signing deals since before yesterday.
They've been breaking news. None of the deals were official until February 1st.
Ah, okay. Because I'm like, wait, what? Anyways, there has been just so much movement amongst the WNBA. I'm going to keep it brief. I'm going to talk to y'all about the biggest moves, which I think the biggest one is going to be Brittany Griner. For the first time in her entire career, will be wearing a jersey other than the Phoenix Mercury. Crazy. She will be going to the Atlanta.
You think that's the biggest one?
One of the biggest.
Oh, yeah. You're talking specifically free agency, not just trades.
I'm talking all of it. Like that is one of the biggest. Brittany Griner leaving the Mercury is a very big deal.
Okay.
What do you think is a bigger deal than that?
The Jewel Lloyd
Oh, that's also huge. That's also huge. I
yeah,
was getting
that
there.
trade. And then
That's also
where did
huge.
Satu go? Brittany Griner may be
Satu
bigger than the Satu, but didn't Satu go to
Satu
Phoenix
is
too or
also going to be
something?
in Phoenix. Yes, Satu's going to be
Yeah,
in Phoenix.
that's what I thought you would say was the biggest. But I got you.
No,
I'm
Brittany
sorry.
Griner
Sorry.
leaving her team
Go ahead. You
is
got it. My
a
fault.
huge
You got
deal.
it. This is your segment.
Sorry. No, okay. Anyways, let's get to that trade since obviously that's the one that Jordan really wants to talk about.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I was
I
just going
was
to say Brittany
surprised that
Griner signed with.
you said that was the biggest one. That's all.
No, I said one of the biggest. There's been so many trades. Like we're going to be here for 30 minutes if I talk to y'all about all of the other things that have occurred. Just know that when we're talking about vets, we're talking about some vets are leaving teams that they have been with for extended periods of time. The bigger names in those conversations being Brittany Griner and Alyssa Thomas, both leaving teams that they have been with for over 10 years to go to new destinations. So the other trade that Jordan is referring to is one of the biggest. It was the biggest trade that has happened so far, and it also was one of the first ones to be announced. And that is a 3-way trade with the Los Angeles Sparks, the Seattle Storm, and the Las Vegas Aces. That results in the Las Vegas Aces getting Jewel Lloyd, which, as you guys know, she's an Olympian, she's a champion, she is a legendary college basketball player. And she didn't have the best year last year, but mind you, let me be clear. She didn't have the best year last year. And what I mean by that is she only averaged 19.7 points per game. Not her regular 20 plus, right? When Asia broke the record of 1,000 points in a season, the person's record who she broke on the way there was Jewel Lloyd, because Jewel Lloyd actually had the most points scored in the season with 967 before Asia broke that record last year. So this is who we're talking about. We're talking about two of the best scorers in the WNBA on the same team. Everybody should be terrified. Yes. With that trade came Kelsey Plum, who is a legendary UW player who was the NCAA scoring leader before Caitlin Clark. So Caitlin Clark broke her record. She is now going back to her home state of California to play for the Los Angeles Sparks. And then the final part of that trade was the Seattle Storm. Obviously, they gave away Jewel. They got Lee Yuru, and they got a first-round pick. They got 2 first-round picks, one for this year and one for next year. The Sparks also got a second-round pick, and they got the number 9 overall pick for this draft. And then the Aces got the number 13 overall pick. So with all that being said, that is how we kicked off trade season. And since then, it has been blockbuster trade after blockbuster trade. Like I said, Alyssa Thomas is now coming to the.
That noise was basketball.
That was crazy.
Coke, because both the WNBA and the MNBA is
losing their minds with the trades
of Coke right now. So sorry,
just
craziness. Like the craziest of drugs. They say, you know what we should do? We should just have the biggest trade we've ever had in history. That's what we should do.
Why the hell not?
That's what we should do.
Why the hell not?
You know what? And then the NBA saw that MNBA was like,
we should do it too.
Hold my beer. hold on. What are we doing? We trading stars.
We are trading stars.
All right, cool.
We are trading stars.
Hold on. Midnight.
Katie and Luka.
Now what? What's next?
Look, I see your Brittany Griner. I will raise you an AD. No, but yeah. So there's a lot of other teams that are other players that are obviously resigning, and the big resigning this year was Kelsey Mitchell coming back to the Indiana Fever. A lot of you guys would understand. If you are
Go Bucks.
Hello. If you are a Caitlin Clark fan, then you obviously are aware of the Indiana Fever, and you should also be aware of Kelsey Mitchell, who basically is the other guard on that team that makes them what they are. It's not just Caitlin Clark, in case y'all were confused. But
and the W is reuniting families.
I'm getting there. The WNBA is, I'm trying to get through them in order. So the other person who I mentioned on this show some weeks ago, Satu Sabli, had mentioned that she was no longer playing for the Dallas Wings anymore. She said that at the beginning on the press day of Unrivaled, that was, she had played her last game there. So there was another 3-team deal between the Mercury, the Dallas Wings, and who else? I can't see.
Was it this? No, it wasn't.
And the Sun, the Connecticut Sun.
Okay.
Yes. So The Mercury got Satu Sabli. They are sending Ty Harris and the rights to Kiki Herbert Harrigan to the Wings. Dallas also acquired Nalissa Smith from the Fever in that deal. And Indiana, in return, is getting Sophie Cunningham from the Mercury, Kalani Brown from the Dallas Wings, a number 19 pick, and rights to Sevgi Uzon. So, and it was a sign and trade because Satu Sabli had been cored. So it had to be a sign and trade. Sabli was not going to be able to leave Dallas without a trade. And so that is the trade. I would like to just say the Mercury is building a fucking squad right now. So everybody should be afraid of the Mercury. We are not still sure if Diana Taurasi is retiring, but they are moving as if she is, because they're picking up a lot of guards. They're getting rid of a lot of people, and they're bringing in a lot more bigs. And they're bringing in a lot more ball handlers and ball distributors. Like Alyssa Thomas on the Mercury, like she could be their point guard. So I'm seeing a lot of movement where the Mercury is restructuring their team in a way to kind of still be championship contenders if Diana Taurasi chooses not to play. Now, with that being said, Nalissa Smith, if y'all are not aware, she used to play for the Fever. Now she obviously plays for the Dallas Wings. Dejanay Carrington plays for the Connecticut Sun. She's the blonde one. Y'all know who she is. She's the blonde one who everybody thinks poked Caitlin Clark in the eye. She didn't poke that girl in the eye. Dejanay Carrington and Nalissa Smith are in a relationship. They have been on and off with each other for a very, very long time. They played together at Baylor during college. Now they are both 4 years into their WNBA careers, and they have lived in different cities and got back together last year. And it was a very, very big deal because everybody sort of peeped it. And then like we kind of saw that it was happening. Well, the Wings traded for Dejanay Carrington and a number 12 draft pick, sending JC Sheldon, who was just a rookie last year, and the number 8 pick to the Sun,
OSU
which
legend.
means
Go Bucks.
that another OSU legend, which means that the Dallas Wings is reuniting families. And this will be the first time that Dejanay Carrington and Nalissa Smith will play on the same team since they were in college.
Yes.
So
I'm gonna steal your shine just briefly.
Oh, that's it.
Because you got most of this, but some of these trades they just combined and added more to make the biggest 4-team trade in W history.
Okay, so which one is that one?
It's some of the players you're talking about. They just kept adding more.
Like, oh yeah.
Like half. They just kept adding more, and now okay. So the Connecticut, they got, and so again, some of these you mentioned, but I just saw a graphic for the whole thing, so I want to break down like the whole thing. Because there's some things that you didn't mention because you probably didn't know because I swear they just started adding people. It's like you just mentioned, and what about that?
Every time you read the trade, it's like different people.
Especially because you originally said it was a 3-team trade, and it was. Then they added a 4th team and just started doing crazy stuff. Okay, so I apologize because again, DJ is great and already read some of this, but the Connecticut gets Natasha Cloud from Phoenix, Rebecca Allen from Phoenix, JC Sheldon from Dallas, and the number 8 pick from Indiana.
Yes.
The Wings.
It was 2 separate trades that involved the same teams. Yes, I see what you're saying. Keep going.
And then Dejanay Carrington gets. The Wings get Dejanay Carrington from Connecticut, Taisha Harris from Connecticut. They swap 2026 second-round picks with Connecticut. They get Nalissa Smith from Indiana, the number 12 pick from Phoenix, the rights to Kiki Herbert Harrington from Phoenix, and the rights to swap 2027 third-round picks from Indiana. The Fever get Sophie Cunningham from Phoenix, the 19 overall pick from Phoenix, and Jaylen Brown from Dallas. And
Jaylen or Kalani?
Jaylen. That's why I'm telling you they made some changes.
What the heck? Okay,
Mercury,
this is news to me.
The Mercury get Alyssa Thomas from Connecticut, Kalani Brown from Dallas, and Sevgi Uzon from Dallas.
Yeah, that's pretty much everybody I mentioned, except for the Jaylen Brown part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2 separate trades. The way that it was in news was rolled out was that it was 2 separate trades, but it involves like all these different teams. So now it's a 4-way trade because like
they announced I think they maybe switched. I think they maybe switched some things.
Yeah,
like they added Jaylen Brown and then Kalani. I think maybe he's going somewhere else. But yeah, they just decided to just change the entire league around. It's crazy.
There's crazy stuff going on. The Connecticut Sun, basically, that whole team, the entire starting 5, they are all on different teams. DeWanna Bonner, it just broke news that DeWanna Bonner will be going to, oh gosh, where is she going? She's going to, oh no. Why can't I
I
remember
don't
where
know,
DeWanna
but
Bowman is going? I think
we're
she's going to the
45 minutes
Fever
in
or
and
something like that.
we haven't mentioned any of our lessons. So
Well, either way, oh yeah, DeWanna Bonner is going to the Indiana Fever, so this will be the first time that DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas, who are engaged to one another, will not be playing together. They played together at the Sun for most of their career, for most of their time together. DeWanna and Alyssa, they didn't overlap all the time, but now they're playing on different teams this year, so that'll be fun to watch if you care about like the personal storylines between the WNBA players. But yeah, a lot of people are saying that there's some tampering going on in Unrivaled, which I thought was so funny because we talked about tampering last week. I don't know. I don't think there's tampering. I just think a lot of players are moving around a lot. And what the gag is, and this will be the last part, is 2026 is when they get their new CBA. So a lot of these players are only signing 1-year deals, which means that if you think this year is going to be insane, wait until next year where the salaries are higher. Most of a bunch of other teams will have practice facilities by that point. Like there's just going to be, and there will be more teams in the NBA, the WNBA at that point, because we'll have the Golden State Valkyries, we'll have the Toronto Tempo. Now we're talking about Nashville Summit, the Tennessee
I don't
Summit,
know if they're
excuse me.
I don't know if they're gonna win that bid.
I hope that they don't do silly stuff. Like just come on, the Tennessee Summit, like at that point, like you're doing it for the commemorativeness of it all over everything. Also, it's a good ownership group. They've got the funds. Like I don't understand like what the issue would be to not,
because there's like 12 other good bids. Like legitimately,
fair. That's also fair.
every day I've seen another thing, and this is a side note because again, we're gonna be here forever. We haven't even got to our lessons, so we can talk about this in more
I'm making my
detail
lessons short, but go ahead.
at another point. And what I was gonna say is the WNBA right now has 15 teams. They're trying to find a 16. We'll talk about this in more detail. They have like 12 or 13 really good bids that I've seen.
Yeah.
Like I obviously haven't seen the bids, but as far as like some of the names, like I know there's Nashville, there's Cleveland, there's Detroit, there's Philly,
Kansas City.
there's Kansas City, Tennessee, and like a bunch of other good ones that I've seen.
That's pretty much, yeah.
If I was them, because it's definitely like 10 or 12. If I was them, I would pick 5. I would go from 15 to 20, space it out, and then not do realignment for a long time. And that's the thing, and that's the thing that I think that people do. Like, and I get like you want to get to like this just happened with the NWSL where they had some really good bigs and they picked one to go to 16. But then in like 2 years or something like that, they're gonna have to like redo it. If you have 12 bids right now and you know you need to grow, I would just be like, okay, 5. Just pick 5, spread them out, right? You can pick them now, but give them some time, right? You can say,
yeah,
are in 2027, you two are in 2028, you two are in 2030, like whatever it is. Let them build to it, let them work to it, get there as soon as possible, because then when you get to 20, you can make the big changes. You have your new CBA. You're going to probably change up divisions or add pods. You're going to add games to the regular season. You're going to add games to the playoffs, maybe a round, something like that. And I already mentioned the CBA is changing, all of that kind of stuff. If you do that all at once, it makes the league more stable because eventually, like this year, they added the 1 or the 2. So they already had to add like 5 more games. And then if they add another 1 or 2, they're probably going to want to do division. And like there's too much changes when they're not doing it at once. And I know they're probably not going to do this, but the number of bids that I've seen, I just pick 5 of them. I would tell them when they're starting, and I would make all the changes at once. But
I agree, that's not happening at all.
No,
because that would require like actual business acumen, and that is just not what's occurring at the moment. So, and that's no shade.
it's
I
shit.
guess I don't mean it to be rude. I just mean it. I'm just calling it like I see it. Like it's just. We're just gonna see how this goes because they're wanting to expand the season and do all this other stuff. But again, like with all the other teams and everything, like that's already naturally going to happen and whatever. So we're just gonna see. Either way, the point is it's chaotic now, and it's probably gonna be even more chaotic next year when there's more teams and a new CBA. So stay tuned.
As we said, the longest 2 minutes. I think DJ went to overtime.
Y'all will be okay.
Power sweep. We have 10 lessons, 5 apiece from the 2024 season. As we transition out of the 2024 season and head to previewing, predicting, talking, discussing, looking at the future. Of course, there will be some minor things like the draft and things like that, but this is a sport that always looks forward. So as we kind of wrap up 2024, while we are firmly in 2025, we wanted to give our 10 lessons. We'll alternate. I'll go first. My first lesson, and this is sort of like a 2-year lesson, is and partially a 3-year lesson because if I remember correctly, Georgia also had some like older players, but seniors matter, right? Like they don't need to be 6-year guys because I have something literally against my own point coming up later. But when you have these young guys, when you have this depth and things like that, we saw it with Ohio State. We saw it with Michigan. We're seeing it now with Penn State. Like, I really think this is going to be a trend, especially as we get out of the 5th and 6th-year guys. The teams that can build a roster and that can keep, right, you're not going to keep everyone, right? Ohio State didn't keep Marvin Harrison Jr. They didn't keep CJ Stroud. They went to the league even though they could come back. Penn State's not keeping Abdul Carter or Tyler Warren. He went to the league, right? Like Michigan lost some of the, like those first-round picks, they're going to go, but like when you have senior leadership, those guys who would be 4th or 5th-round picks, but they're really good and really valuable in college. And you can, in Ohio State's case, you're Lathan Ransom, right? And in Michigan's case, Barrett was his name. They had a linebacker, I can't remember his name. Some people in O-line. You have these guys who are going to be 4th and 5th-round picks. You get them to come back to try to fight to win, do something else in college, get a little bit more NIL money because those NFL contracts aren't that great in that time, but then also try to work their way into being a 2nd or 3rd-round pick, in some of their cases, a 1st-round pick if they play that position. I think that is a major key. I think that we're going to see that matter more than it's ever mattered before, especially as these players hit the transfer portal and things like that. I think that there's going to be a major key to kind of loyalty in these guys. And I don't mean loyalty as in leaving it is bad and things like that, but they're the guys who, even if they're not the best player in Ohio State was Jeremiah Smith. He's a freshman, right? But these guys, Emeka coming back to help Jeremiah Smith is huge as a senior wide receiver who could have been like a 2nd or 3rd-round pick last year is probably going to be a 1st-round. Seniors matter in this landscape with all the changes, with all the money and the social media and the things that can lose your focus and all of this stuff. I think the team, you don't have to have the best seniors, but the teams that have good senior leadership, that have those players that come back to try to raise their draft stock, I think those are going to be the teams that will be successful in the playoffs, even if not only one team can win a national champion. But I think even if you look at the 4 team, right? Like when we get to the semi, I think you're going to see some similarities in those teams.
Are we going back and forth?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was like, I thought you were just going to run through them. Okay. So one of my lessons, and I think I've talked this to death, so I'm not going to do too much. The SEC bias is one of the strongest drugs that I've ever witnessed people do in my life. I'm pretty sure it's the type of drug that you snort because the delusion is just beyond. Like, I've never seen anything like it. I hate it. I want no parts of it. There was just such a level of just assumption about SEC football teams that was just so like, it was almost like hard to like take serious at certain points because it's just like, bro, I see what's happening on the field. Like, I see how Tennessee is playing. I see how Bama's playing. Like, I see how some of these SEC teams are playing, but we're still going to sit here and act like they're the best ever. Like, I just, okay. So one of my lessons that I learned from 2024 is to take everything about the SEC and how they talk about it and all that with a grain of salt.
Fair enough. My next lesson is and this is controversial for some, the 12-team playoff is good for the regular season. I think that this is one of those things, like it's a semantic thing. I also think that, like, I say this all the time, that like America needs more words, like English needs more words. Like, and I say that because like when you look at like other languages, they have like a lot more words to describe things. Like
for one thing,
there's a reason why we have one word that's like 7 different things, and it's all on context. Like America needs more words. English specifically needs more words. And the reason why I say that is because everyone's like, the 12-team playoff is bad for the regular season because the Michigan Ohio State rivalry doesn't matter, things like that. And what I think they're saying is that it is no longer, the regular season no longer matters because they still want that perfection, and they still want one individual game that will ruin someone's season.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's how you view that, I also think you should be specific. But in my opinion, as I've said before, so I won't get stuck on this, I don't think you should be asking 18 to 22-year-olds to be perfect. But the broader thing is just think about how many teams were relevant. Think about how many teams that we talked about. Think about how many good games we got.
Oh
We
my
got
gosh, yes.
Kansas just ruining people in the Big 12. Kansas single-handedly is the reason we got Arizona State, Texas. Arizona
Exactly.
State didn't get that bid on their own because they were further down. They were further down the pecking order, and then Kansas decided to wake up and be a good team again and beat Colorado and beat these other teams, and now we get Arizona State, right? We got SMU, right? We got Miami for some time. That, like, again, that Miami Syracuse game really mattered.
Mm-hmm.
As we predicted, that game wouldn't have mattered before, and literally that game, Syracuse loses a game that they shouldn't, I believe, the Pitt or somewhere.
Yeah.
So they're no longer in the race for the ACC, but they go in and you get that game, and that game changes the playoffs. That then puts Clemson, who was not even going to be in the playoffs.
No one was talking about Clemson.
Clemson beats SMU. Now SMU and Clemson are both in there. Like there are so many. We talked about Colorado, and not like last year's Colorado, where it was just like, Deion's annoying.
Like,
we
yay them, yeah.
talked about, like, Colorado going to the playoffs. We talked about Kansas. We talked about Arizona State. We talked about Indiana. There was conversations about South Carolina. There was conversations about Illinois, right? Like there was conversations in the beginning. It fell off because they ended up losing some games. But when Nebraska was 5-0, we were talking about Nebraska and can they get in? And so these games mattered more, right? If this in the 14 playoff, when you know it's just a conference championships, nobody cares about.
We're not talking anymore. Yeah,
about Kansas, Colorado in week 11. Nobody cares about SMU, Miami in week. Maybe that was week 11 too, or week 12. So
we didn't play Miami.
Sorry, Syracuse, Miami.
Yeah, we do next year though.
Yeah, so it's just like it is better for the regular season as a whole. It keeps it more entertaining. It keeps it more just sort of like broad, right? It makes more games matter. And yes, in the process of more, maybe you lose the individual. But my thing is, and I say this from the Ohio State Michigan side because this is the one that they always bring up, the Ohio State Michigan game doesn't mean any less to the players, to the coaches, or to the fans.
To the culture,
it may mean less to the standings. It may mean that, okay, yes, you can lose this game and still make the playoffs, but it doesn't mean there was literally a fight. Players got pepper sprayed. Like rivalry games are always going to matter in the sport. I don't care what anyone says. So like, if you're saying the regular season doesn't matter because you miss when Clemson, Georgia in week 1 meant a team could never make the playoffs, that fucking sucks for you.
Jacked.
But the 12-team playoff was absolutely better for the regular season.
I will piggyback off of that one. Like with the playoffs having so many more implications throughout the regular season, I felt like it made for better storylines. So my second lesson that I'm taking away from this season, mine of course are more general because this is my first time really watching college football as a whole, but they're just better storylines. Like there are just better storylines.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got her.
There are just better storylines. I mean, I do think we'd be dragging it though. We don't have to tell, the athlete's whole entire background of who died and
that's the NFL,
all of that. They do that in college too. But I do love that because the 12-team playoff had more implications, you found yourself being more invested in the games later in the season as well, because they had playoff implications because not anybody could get in, but y'all know what I mean. Like it wasn't just conference champions, like he said, but also like there was just so many more implications on how certain teams could make it into the playoffs versus their championship games versus, oh, well, if they don't make the championship, could they still make the playoffs? I mean, I feel like
And
the last 3
seeding
weeks
too.
was,
Seeding mattered too.
yeah, like I feel like seeding was, I just felt like the last 3 weeks of the season, like mattered so much. Like in a way where like, I'm not sure because I don't have a reference, but like last year, I feel like it wouldn't have mattered as much. But yeah, like I found myself watching games because that particular game had playoff, implications for teams that weren't even playing. So it did feel more like what I really like about the NFL of like having all those different results that could come from, oh, if this team wins and this team loses together, then this could happen here. And then this, I love that. So I felt like there were some really great storylines that came out of all of this.
Facts. My next one is coaching and culture matter more than ever. Not to sound like a boomer and things like that,
I'm not a boomer.
because I think two things can be true. I think that NIL and the transfer portal has hurt college football as a whole while helping the players. And
Yeah.
ultimately, to me, helping the players is more important.
Yeah.
But in that, I do genuinely like, and there's so many sports cliches. There are so many sports cliches, but one of them that I will never let anyone say is a cliche, and anyone who's been on a bad team or been on a good team knows this: the culture genuinely matters. The culture in that locker room, the culture set, whether there's accountability or it's laziness or it's hard work or brotherhood, all like culture really matters. And the transfer portal, and I think NIL is an affront to culture, which is why the $10 million head coaches need to be more involved than they've ever needed to be. You can no longer just get 25 stars and beat everyone.
And
You
hope.
have
Yeah.
to develop. You have
Yeah.
to have a culture. You have to be able to work with 18-year-olds who are making the best money in their lives, who have an auntie and uncle and a dad and a mom and a cousin who want them to go to X school for $2 million because that's going to help feed the family and all these other kind of things. And all of that is good. But the culture and the coach then matters, right? And I think we saw that with Ohio State. We saw that with Notre Dame, right? Where these players came back for their coach. They were playing for their coach. When it got hard, when there was buy-ins, when there was trials and things like that, they didn't give up. Where other teams, for example, say Ole Miss, who was legitimately one of the most talented teams in college football, they couldn't do it. Miami, also one of the most talented teams in college football, their quarterback may be the first quarterback taken, and they kept losing these games because the level of coaching and the culture mattered, right? And I think that is where Nick Saban was above all. But because Saban's not there anymore, and so there's not going to be this one person, right? I think Georgia's still one of the most talented teams, but their culture has eroded. And so I think that affected them. So one of my lessons is that culture and coaching matter more than they've ever had. And we are maybe finally getting to an era where it is okay to be a good person and a college football coach, right? Urban Meyer is not a good person, but in that era, he was a great college football coach because how many coaches from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s is it that person cussed me out, that person hit
Yeah.
Willie Hayes was punching players, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think
That
we're
was
getting
part of the
to
culture. I mean, we should
yeah,
not be doing that anymore, but like
but I
that was
think
a
we're
part of
getting
it.
to a place where, like, think about like Ryan Day. That's a good story. That's a good man, right? Marcus Freeman, good story, good man. Like, and so I think the coach, the culture, that stuff matters more than it ever has. And maybe it'll change again eventually, but that's one of the lessons that I got.
I think to go off of that culture, because it's so interesting that you and I we said to each other, okay, we're gonna do these 10 lessons and then just come up and bring them to the show. So like this is our first time hearing each other's lessons, but mine was about college football culture and how it just seems like it's just it has stronger implications in a lot of different ways. Like I hear you obviously talk about like Ohio State and the fandom and how like the players are really actually like affected by that and the coaches are affected by that and they see that and they want, and there's a level of like wanting to please the fans just as much as like anything else. And excuse me, that came out of nowhere. And that culture is encompassed like fully, like the way that people completely dial into college football is something that I have never seen, because at SMU we don't have that type of culture yet. We've never really had that. I think like obviously when we were, you know, in the Cotton Bowl and all of that stuff, and you know, back during Eric Dickerson's era and all of that, like we were on the way there, and then we got the death penalty. And so the culture at SMU is just very different. I think we're getting there where we're becoming more like football cultured and having those traditions and all that, but we don't have that same level of history as like some of these other schools. So like seeing that, like even being at Penn State, I'm just like, these people, like this is the only thing that they do with their lives, it seems like. But like that's what this is all about. Like, yeah, there's the NIL and all of those stuff is like adding to the confusion, but like the culture is still very much like at the forefront, which I love. And that goes in hand with the coaching and with, you know, whatever culture is being cultivated at those schools, because the players are playing obviously because they're getting paid, some of them obviously because they love the coaches or whoever they're playing for, but they also like, I think the culture very much impacts their experience as athletes as well. Like, you know, and that matters just as much as everything else. And when you're making those decisions.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And ladies and gentlemen, we got her. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. Next year, it's gonna be locked in. My second to last one: senior quarterbacks in COVID year caused a negative effect. You'll see this in the NFL draft. You'll see this in certain places, and I'll try to be quick on this one because I think this is something worth expanding on a little bit later. But you know, the two teams for a very long time, the best teams in the country had the best quarterbacks, right? USC had Caleb Williams. Alabama had Tua and Jalen and Bryce. Ohio State had CJ and Justin Fields. Clemson, when they won, had Trevor and Deshaun Watson. Really, up until Georgia won with Stetson Bennett, the teams. I mean, when Florida State won their championship, they had Jameis, right? These teams having these like first round picks, these kind of star quarterbacks. LSU won. They had Joe Burrow, right? And I think the thing that happened, and it was very brief, but somehow it's also like tricked our minds. Teams, because of COVID, because of the extra year, and then also because of the inability to recruit high school talent during COVID, there was a lot of mistakes. Teams went to this model where they wanted senior quarterbacks. That's how you get Michael Penix Jr. That's how you get Bo Nix. That's how you get Riley Leonard, Will Howard. That's how you get Cam Ward. That's how you get.
Did you say Carson Beck already?
He doesn't. He counts into what I'm going to say, but he doesn't count into this because he's still in his regular 4 years.
Okay.
That's how you get the right. Like
we're talking about the guys who have COVID years. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and so, but this caused, in my opinion, caused a negative effect. It's why the last two quarterback drafts have not been great, but it's also why. Like, because these quarterbacks, right, have played. I mean, Bo Nix played at multiple schools. These senior quarterbacks get to go from school to school to school. Some of them are playing at 4 or 5 schools, right? You have the guy that SMU just got. I can't think of his name right now. Who played at Wisconsin and then he played at Miami. And now
his name is Ty.
All of these guys.
Van Dyke. Something.
Tyler Van Dyke. Yes, Tyler Van Dyke. So it's like. It's caused this two-part effect. It made the sport narrower, which was good for viewership. It made it more volatile because the quarterbacks just weren't good, even at the best schools, at least not like they used to be. It wasn't the separator it used to be. But then it also created a class of quarterbacks who weren't starting until their junior or senior year, who you had no idea if they were good or not. And that's where you get Carson Beck. And that's where you get Kyle McCord. And that's where you get these guys who, like Kyle McCord started 2 years. Ohio State wasn't happy with him. He got a little bit better, but he's still really not NFL ready. But now he's out of eligibility. Carson Beck didn't start till his junior
Mm.
year, had never seen him. And so you kind of have this class of quarterback that was, because of this kind of like top down nature and these super senior. And if you're good, right, you're not going to be here for your 56th year. The good
You're
quarterbacks
going to
left.
the
People left.
NFL.
Joe Burrow left. Caleb left. Bryce Young left. Like the really good quarterbacks left. And it just left this vacuum of really young guys and old guys who weren't good enough for the league. And so it also created, and the last thing that I'll say, it created this kind of weird thing where people forgot what quarterbacks looked just 4 years ago. CJ started as a sophomore. Bryce started as a sophomore. Trevor Lawrence took the job as Trevor Lawrence took the job as a freshman. Caleb Williams took the job mid-year as a freshman. And so now people are saying, oh my God, Ohio State's going to start a sophomore. Oh my God, Texas is going to start a junior. Oregon's going to start a sophomore. Georgia let Carson Beck leave for a sophomore. And they forgot that, yeah, that's what happened.
That's what
You
you're supposed to do.
came in, you sat for a year, maybe two, but in a lot of cases, you sat for a year, and then your redshirt freshman or sophomore year, you were the starting quarterback. You played for 2 years. You were in the league your junior year. Your junior year, they got in another guy. He sat that year and started the next year. That's what happened. And so now all these guys are gone, and there's not this major transfer thing. And the guys like Carson Beck and things you realize aren't good. And so now everyone's like, no, we have to play the quarterbacks on our roster.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? We've never seen this quarterback before. We've never seen Julian Sane. We've never seen, I can't remember Oregon's quarterback right now. Michigan maybe starting a freshman. Like, oh, we've never seen him. How do we know that we're good? And it's like,
Duh. This is college football.
That's what we
Duh.
So the senior quarterbacks in the COVID year has kind of and so quickly, it just like sapped people's memories, and it like really ruined the sport, and it created a vacuum of really bad quarterbacks. And next year is going to be that kind of restarting of that. You're going to get like Nico in his second year. You're going to get DJ Lagway, who was in that mold, who took the job as a freshman midway through the year because someone got hurt. You're going to get these young guys, and then you're going to get the more traditional second year, maybe third year at the max, but second year guy who was a highly rated recruit at an Ohio State, at a Georgia, at Alabama, at a Oregon, at these schools who are playing, and you don't know what's going to happen, but the sport is getting back to what it's always been.
Period. We love that, because when I saw at the Pop-Tart Bowl that there was a guy from Miami who was finally done after 9 years of college football, I was like,
that was sick. Get a job.
Why are we playing college football for 9 years?
Get a job.
No tea, but like, honey, it's not happening. And that's just the nature of the beast. If it's not happening for you after 3-4 years, sorry about you. Like, it's not happening for you. But I mean, maybe it's just the love of the game. I don't know. One thing that I learned, because I was shocked to find this out, obviously, during the season, that top-ranked matchups, top 10 matchups, top 5 matchups don't really happen very often during the regular season. I find that to be absolutely insane. I thought that was part of it, but apparently I had learned this year that this was abnormal. But the top-ranked matchups are fun, and there should be more of them. And that's really it. The top-ranked matchups are fun. There should be more of them. Like, don't make us wait till the end of the season to watch the best teams play each other.
100%. This year was very fun because of that, and hopefully that continues.
Hopefully we keep that going. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, mine will also be brief. This last one, because my last one was not brief. 7-on-7 changed the sport. 7-on-7 has been one of, if not the greatest influence to the change in the sport. Mm-hmm. Look at the NFL and look at all the receivers who are getting 1,000 yards as a freshman, as a rookie. Look at college football and seeing Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman, Nick Marsh, DeCorian Moore, who's not on campus yet, but it looks like he's not going to be Jeremiah Smith, but looks like he's going to be like a Ryan Williams or Cam Coleman, instant contributor for Oregon as a freshman. Mm-hmm. And it's because these kids are running real routes and reading coverages since they're 11.
Period.
And AAU has been awful for basketball. Like, straight up, straight down, AAU is awful for basketball. But 7-on-7 for quarterbacks and wide receiver, it is just increased. Like, they're literally coming with they're coming into college with with college level skills already.
Knowledge and skills,
So
yeah.
then if you have a good coach, because not everyone's able to do this, but if you have a good coach and if they have the dedication, they're then getting pro level skills in college and then going to the pro and they're pro ready. And everyone's like, that's how it should work. No, it's not. Like that is one of the biggest things about college that I think people misunderstand. High school doesn't really teach you anything
It doesn't
because
teach you much.
in most
Yeah.
cases, you're the best player on a bad team and you
Yeah.
literally just do whatever you want to. If you run straight, you're gonna outrun everybody. If
Yeah.
you run straight, you're gonna run through the 5'11" offensive lineman and make a tackle. Like there's a lot of skill that's not needed. If you're 6'5", 260 as a defensive end, you don't need a pass rush move. Who's blocking you? You're
Nobody.
playing your
It's
local team 10 minutes up the road. The offensive tackle is 5'10". So
and it's also
college,
like it depends on the schools, right? It depends on the culture.
yeah,
Like in Texas, when you're playing football, you are probably going to get a little bit more of that knowledge and that
yes,
development because we have a pipeline from high school all the way up to the pros. We have a pipeline. We, school, even you said in Ohio, like there's some schools that are known, high schools that are known for football, like across the nation.
yeah,
That's not happening. Like if you are in freaking Roanoke and you just go to high school there and you play football, like this is all the big guys at the school on the team
yeah.
together. Like that's not, you're not, unless, and a lot of guys, that's why they have to play football outside of school, because if you actually genuinely want to have a career, you have to play on select teams and things like that to actually get the development.
Yeah, and so college football is mainly about development, but wide receivers and we haven't seen it as much with quarterbacks in my opinion, partially because all the senior quarterbacks, right? Like so as we've gotten these classes of wide receivers who can start as a freshman, the quarterbacks who have been doing 7-on-7 for the same amount of time are just
Mm-hmm.
sitting because of the set. Like it kind of goes together with my last point, but 7-on-7 has changed the sport. We're gonna have instant freshmen who are just very very good, excuse me, and we're seeing this like wealth of wide receivers in the NFL. And ooh, in 25 to 30 years, the conversation on who gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame is going to be disgusting because they can't all get in there, right? Like they can't all get in there. Like
Not disgusting.
there's a lag with like Terry Holt and Reggie Wayne and Larry Fitz and like some of those guys because it's just like, oh, there was a really good like when Jerry was in, there was like a really good run, and then like that early 2000s there was a really good run, and we can't put them all in, and then you're having all of these guys. Like there's gonna be one of these guys is gonna go have a 15-year career and be really good and not make the league
I'm not,
because
yeah.
Jeremiah Smith exists. Like it's gonna be crazy. But 7-on-7 has had a amazing impact on college football.
Period. Shout out to 7-on-7. My last one, I wish it wasn't negative, but also like it's not that negative. The playoff schedule is terrible. Burn it, crumple it up, throw it in the trash, try again. And honestly, more so because of the effects that I feel like it had on the game. Like that is not a coincidence that every team that had a bye week in the playoffs lost. That's not a coincidence. Like the teams that had more time off were losing. I don't like that. So for me personally, and it was the teams that were constantly in the practice of playing and had played the weeks before or had not really had as much time off that were winning. So I just feel like the schedule needs to be a little bit more condensed. And I know we talked about that before, but that was one thing I took away from it is like, when you're making these sorts of changes in sports, like you gotta put it in place. You gotta get proof of concept. You gotta go back. You gotta adjust. You do that with everything, right? Any strategy. So love the playoffs. Love the way that we came into it. Don't need y'all to talk about it every game, every Saturday, every time slot. That's not necessary. But as far as the actual scheduling goes, it just got way too spread out, and I think that had a negative effect on the actual like on-field product. So let's do like 7-day maximum. Like we don't need 10 and 12
Please.
and 11 days between the games. Like 1 week, okay, but like anything more than that is too much.
I agree and disagree. I think the buys were less the schedule and more the seeding because
Mm.
Oregon should have never had to play Ohio State Arizona State and Boise shouldn't have had buys, right? If that was Texas and Ohio State that had the buys with Oregon or Penn State, right? Like, I don't think they would have lost that game. So I don't think it was the buys as much as it was the seeding, but the schedule is still also awful. It's bad for the players. It's bad for the fans. It's bad for TV, which who really cares about TV? But you don't
Well,
need
somebody
this.
cares,
This
but
is
yeah,
not. I mean, as a fan, I hate when people are like TV. Shut up. It's
like
fine
y'all aren't getting
paying
paid.
you until
Y'all are not getting paid.
until this podcast is sponsored by Fox or ESPN. I don't give a fuck about the TV number. Stop talking about it. Like, what are we talking? Like, stop being weird.
And the TV numbers weren't all that great. Like, no T, but the TV numbers were still down from previous years.
Yeah,
So,
and it's because the freaking championship was on January 20th. Like,
yeah, like we could work that out just a little bit. We could iron out the kinks on that, because if it really is about TV numbers, don't get me into my sports management bag, but like if it really is about TV numbers, having the games closer together is actually better for viewership than having them this
and
far
also
out.
not having them, because there are a lot more, like the 12-team playoff and some of these other things that were done was done for the casual fans, right?
Yeah.
It was to steal some fans away from the NFL. It was to steal some kind of people who weren't rabid or
who don't watch the whole season.
And all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And you're taking those fans and you're saying, okay, but now our season ends and the NFL Conference Championship weekend. And they're like, no, that shit was cool in November, but it's NFL time. It's
wild card weekend, like,
yeah,
girl.
Like, so
it's wild card weekend. I'm not doing this with y'all. Like,
Ooh.
I know. So that's the only thing is, like, as a fan that's on the more casual side, because I still consider myself a casual college football fan. I just didn't love, like, if I really was, to your point, like only watching the postseason, like, I'm gonna watch the NFL. Like, what are we? It's December to January. That's the most important time in the NFL. That's when we decide. That's who gets determined. AFC championships, NFC championships, wild card games, all of that. And you want me to also be trying to keep up with whatever y'all got going on?
Yeah.
No.
I'm as big a fan as anyone, and I was traveling during the semifinals because I booked it in advance and didn't realize that the games were going to be played on Thursday and Friday.
Friday, yeah.
And everyone, I talk about how much of a psycho I am. Like, I literally am like,
you plan your year around college football. We know.
I'm watching the game, and these are my friends. It's people that I care about. I'm celebrating my Founders Day, but they don't watch college football like I do, and they're talking to me about the game, and I'm just like, please, like, please. But like, that wouldn't have happened if I realized that the game was that day. I would have stayed home. Like, I would have just, you know what I mean? So it's just like,
he would have been like, I'll catch y'all after the game. Like, I need to.
Again, my point is, like, I didn't realize when the games were. I do a weekly podcast on it. Like, this is kind of like my thing. Literally, before I got on this podcast, my wife told me I was addicted to college football. Like, so your casual fan, they're not going to know that game's on Thursday.
Or we're gonna notice the day of and be like, oh shit, let me turn it on. Like,
it's
because it's also the way that they talked about it, right? The way that they talked about the playoffs. I feel like once the playoffs actually started, then we didn't hear nothing about it. It was so weird. I was like, y'all hyped it up all year, and y'all told us it's 12 teams, it's this, it's that, it's blah blah blah, whatever. And then I wasn't seeing no commercials about semifinals. I wasn't seeing no commercials.
NFL commercials. They didn't have the money.
Then they need to buy the commercial spots because they can afford it. Let's not play on those games. They can afford those commercial spots. But I'm watching other sporting events. Like, I'm not just watching the NFL at the time. I'm watching NBA. I'm watching other sporting events. I'm watching college basketball. Because I'm just being honest though. I'm watching college basketball. You can't give me a football playoff commercial in the middle of college basketball. If I'm watching college basketball, I'm obviously interested in college sports in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, consumer behavior. Like, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why am I getting more commercials about Unrivaled in December than I am about the college football playoffs? I was so confused. And I know y'all have the content. Y'all have plenty of content to make a damn commercial. I was like, I should not have to, off of my own mind, remember when these games are.
Yeah.
And but also not even during the bowl games. There were no commercials even during the bowl games.
Yeah, if the games were on Saturday, like they always are, you wouldn't have to be reminded. So,
and then I also would not be fatigued. Yes, that is true. Yeah. I would not be fatigued in having to remember, because it would be just on the regular Friday, Saturday, or Saturday situation. But I'm just like, sports business wise, like, y'all could do better with the promotion towards the end. Y'all could do better.
Yep. And that 7-7 my last one, but I have a bonus one. Fans don't like the underdog.
Where is that coming from? Because I'm like, what?
I'll tell you where it's coming from. Nobody was happy about SMU. Nobody was happy about Indiana. Nobody was happy about Arizona State. Nobody was happy about Boise. As soon as Indiana lost, and I know some of that was the SEC people, but it's like, oh, South Carolina, oh, Alabama, this team shouldn't have been there. That team shouldn't have been there. And it's just like we do all this stuff and we talk about all these things, and everyone talks about parity and all this other kind of stuff. And nobody could sit, I won't say nobody, but so many people couldn't be like, man, that was just a great year for Indiana. It was immediately, we should have got this blue blood in there and this, that, and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And in college football, they don't like the underdog. They don't want SMU to have the best season of their history, even if they lose round one and throw 17 pick sixes. They don't want Indiana to have
so 17 is just not how many that was thrown
in their season. They don't want Arizona State to take Texas to the brim. They don't care about the underdog. They love it in basketball, but the hatred and the vitriol and the things that came out of Indiana, SMU, Boise, Arizona State, those teams getting buys, those first round games, they don't like the underdog. They wanted to see Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Michigan. That's it. Penn State. That's it. They didn't want to see nobody else.
I feel like that's not a matter of not liking the underdog. I feel like that's a matter of only wanting to see the top teams all the time. I feel like that's what that is. Like,
but it's both, because if you like the underdog when they got there, you'd be like, all right, let's go Indiana. Like nobody was rooting for it. They were rooting for all those teams to get embarrassed so that they could further their point that they should have never been there.
That they should never be there. No, I understand what you're saying, because I saw the conversation happening about SMU. As soon as we got blown out, it was like, well, this is why we shouldn't have the 12 team, or we should have let the losers in because they lost the championship, and so now blah 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 blah, right? And I understand that, but I also think that that's one thing about college football culture that can be a little off-putting, is that there's also such a strong level of loyalty to the same old teams that have been in the top of all these years. That's how the SEC bias has gotten so disingenuous this year, because y'all are used to Tennessee being one version of Tennessee, and we all saw a different version of Tennessee this year. I'm sorry about you. I know that historically speaking, we're used to this. That's not what we saw this year. Same thing with Bama. Same thing with a lot of these other teams where it's like they're losing games that they shouldn't be losing because you have this unnatural allegiance to whatever they used to be and not who they currently are. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on too, of like, it just has to be my team or nothing. And there's no like, I understand though. I just feel like it's more about the brands.
I get that from an individual fan, but it was the sport as a whole. It was the national media.
The media was awful about it,
because like that would never happen in March Madness.
The media was awful about it.
Overhypes underdogs in March Madness. Nobody cared, and so that's why I say fans don't like the underdog. The media doesn't like the underdog. They don't want that story. They just want the big brands.
And I think it's because like March Madness, the culture of March Madness is marked by underdogs, right? The culture of March Madness is the 16th seed going on to win the entire thing. And that's stuff that's like genuinely possible. Those bracket busters, all of that. Like this is our first time of really having like that sort of style with college football. So
and I think just to use my favorite word, I just feel like it's disingenuous, because the same people who say they wanted a bigger playoff are the same people who don't want these teams in it. And it's just like
they wanted a bigger playoff for their favorite teams. They didn't want a bigger playoff in general.
They wanted the SEC Big Ten Invitational.
Exactly. And that's what it's really about. That's why I'm like, I feel like fans, I think, are okay with underdogs. I think the media is trying to tell fans to not be okay with it. I said some fans. Let me say some fans. Oh my God, not all fans. Jesus. One I'm saying is, I feel like
not all fans.
There's fans that were into it, but there was also the media that was actively trying to control the narrative and tell us to not be into it. Because even that announcement show made me so freaking mad. Like the way that they talked about SMU, like we did not win 11 games. Like, we won 11 games. If you want your beloved Bama to be in the playoffs, win 11 games. I don't know what to fucking tell you. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But I feel you. It was interesting.
Facts. All right. 2-minute warning. Let's get up out of here. My 2-minute warning, I'll go first because mine's not sports related and yours is much better. I started watching House.
There we go.
And House and other shows, my wife is also watching Elementary right now, and other shows like that are just always like super hilarious to me because it's like this person is always right.
Yeah.
Let's doubt them for 55 minutes.
No,
like let's
literally.
let's
Let's
tell
not do
them
what they say actively.
that they're like yeah, let's they're the stupidest person ever. Stupidest person ever for 55 minutes. And then at the end it's like, oh wow, you were right. And I just think that's funny.
It's House is really good. I do like House. I don't watch it all the time. I'm one of those people, unfortunately, Grey's Anatomy has rotted my brain in such a way to where like if it's not like Grey's, like it's hard for me to watch. Like if it's a hospital show, um, word to Shonda Rhimes, love her. Obsessed with her. Speaking of Shonda, there's a new Shonda Land show coming out that you would actually love. Um, did you watched Orange is the New Black, right? Or you're like aware of it?
I did. I watched it up until they killed Poussey, and I said, nope.
No, I can't believe they killed Poussey. So you know Uzo Aduba, the one who played Crazy Eyes.
Yeah.
She is starring in a new Netflix series that is a murder mystery, and the murder happens at the White House. And the entire show is about her figuring out who committed the murder. But it has like a whole bunch of like top billed like actors and actresses in it. And it's a Shonda production, which means it is going to be good. And that comes out on Netflix mid-March. But I was like, this seems like a Jordan sort of thing because you like drama. Anyways, my 2-minute warning is that Asia Wilson is getting her jersey. Actually, it has already happened since we started the show, but Asia Wilson got her jersey retired at South Carolina today. And I love that for her. And congratulations. That's really all. I mean, they did build her a statue, so I would imagine that the jersey retirement would have to come at some point. You would think that the jersey retirement would come before the statue, but whatever, chicken egg, it doesn't matter.
So I think the reason that happened is colleges never retire jerseys.
They don't. This is not a common practice.
Kelsey Plum was the first one to get hers retired, and that was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, the first one at UW, as from what I understand. But
okay. Not
ever. Yeah, the first one at UW because they've retired like Cheryl Miller's jersey at USC and like stuff like that. So like it gets done. I will say in basketball, college basketball, the jerseys get retired in the NBA a lot more often than on the college level. So and in the NBA, WNBA sort of, but not a whole lot on the college level. So shout out to Asia. She's getting her jersey retired today. At South Carolina, they are currently playing Auburn and winning, it looks like. And also because she has the same number and it's February 2nd, they also did retire Caitlin Clark's jersey today in Iowa. And you know, so that way I don't look like a hater, I will also mention that. But yeah, shout out to the ladies getting their jerseys retired. Love that for them. Yeah. She is South Carolina's all-time leading scorer. So it's only right.
Yeah. My shout out to both of them. Shout out to Asia. My one and only thought to this, I want to make a plea. I want to make a pitch. In the rare cases, and there's only 2 cases, 1.5 cases, in the rare cases where a particular number is so good and dominant, I think the entire league should retire it. I think 23 should never be worn again when LeBron is retired.
I agree.
LeBron and Michael Jordan, you're never going to have 2 basketball.
Let's not do that again. Yeah, no, I feel that.
Retired forever. The reason I bring that up, and the reason I say 1.5, is I think Asia has reached that level. If and only if, and this is a big if, but if Caitlin turns into the player that they expect her to be, that means that her and Asia will be up there as 2 of the greatest of all time. And they both wear 22. If they retire and Asia got her 4 or 5 MVPs and her 6 rings, and Caitlin has her 3, 4 MVPs and 5 rings, like what if that is how their careers end, 22 should be retired in the W forever. And I agree. Super early. I mainly bring that up because I wanted to talk about LeBron and Jordan, but since they both happen to wear 22, if their careers go the way, I mean, Asia's is already there. So like, but I think for an entire league to retire a number, it needs to be multiple. If Caitlin has a career that people think she'll have on top of Asia's, 22 should be cut out the W, and the singular second LeBron retires off the backs of LeBron and Michael Jordan, 23 should never be worn again.
And 22 is a pretty iconic number in the WNBA specifically because that was Cheryl Swoops' number. And as we know, Cheryl Swoops is one of the best.
That's 3. You already got that.
Exactly. So
You
Cheryl
already got
Swoops
the
is
2,
one of
but if
the
you get
best
Caitlin as
WNBA
well, you
players
got Cheryl
ever.
22.
She's the WNBA version of Michael Jordan. Like she's the reason why a lot of young women wear number 22. So yeah, I would say if it's to your point, like after Asia has collected her rings, after Caitlin has collected her rings, yeah, why is anybody wearing number 22?
22 should be cut.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the singular second LeBron retires,
Yeah.
23 should never be worn.
I also think, wait, let me not lie. Because didn't Maya Moore? No, she didn't wear it. She wore a single digit number, didn't she?
I thought Maya Moore wore 23.
Did she wear 23? Yeah, I think she did. Yeah. Because of Jordan. Yeah.
Yep. All right. That's the show. Yeah, that's the show. As always, thank you for listening. Follow us on Instagram. Give us a like and subscribe at Get Defensive Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram at Get Defensive Sports Network. Follow us on TikTok at GD Sports Network. Listen to the show as always. Thank you, and we will catch you next week.